Hi, it's Sandy, and today I'm coming to you with another genre recommendation video. So today's video is slightly different on the genre recommendation. It's not technically a genre recommendation, as it were, but it is. I'll just explain what I'm going to do, and you'll understand what I mean. So, in this video, I've decided to recommend to you, as you'll have seen from the thumbnail and from the title, true crime books. So these are some of my favourite true crime books that I have collected over the past few years. I do have things such as medical and forensic textbooks kicking about, but those are probably less interesting to people who are just wanting to read it to get the information, because this, and a lot more disturbing, because a lot of the ones I have are quite graphic, and by graphic I mean like they're textbooks, so they have like disemboweled bodies on them and stuff. So yeah, not going to be recommending that for people who have not so great stomachs. But yeah, what I'm going to do instead is go over these sort of true crime non-fictions that I have, and sort of give you the recommendation based on that, and give you a quick rundown of what they are and why I enjoyed them. So the first is actually one I got while I was doing my degree in forensic science, and that is Dead Men Do Tell Tales by William R. Maples and Michael Browning. Now, William Maples is a PhD in forensic anthropology, and he is basically, forensic anthropology, the first thing people think of is like bones. They look at bones, and they do, but their work is a lot more than just bones. Anthropology looks at, it's really the study of humans, I suppose. So bones do come into that. They can tell you if it was someone who was male, female. Quite often they can tell you race markers, so based on skull shape, pelvis shape, you're looking at things based on the ratio of your torso to your legs. So women tend to have a longer torso to leg ratio, whereas with men it tends to be switched round. Things like your femur can give you an estimate of the person's height, things like that. That is kind of what they look for in the bones. However, they do also look at other things such as tattoos, markings, wear. There's so much that they look at. This is quite a lot of based on bones. This particular guy, William Maples, was actually one of the people in charge of the discovery of the Romanovs and the hunt for the bodies of the Romanov family. There's so many photos in this that I think are really, really cool. So like, for example, they did a study on, this is the skeleton of the Elephant Man, Joseph Merrick, who is a man who had a condition that caused bony growths to appear or to grow uncontrollably. It's really, really quite sad the way that he was treated, but fascinating in a research perspective. Things like pelvises, so you see how this pelvis is wider. This is so that you can fit a baby through it. This one doesn't need to fit a baby through it, so it doesn't need to be that wide. It's fascinating. I could go on about anthropology for ages, and there'll be more anthropology in here because I was lectured by Sue Black while I was at university, and I do have a couple of her books. Next is one you've heard me talk about recently in a video, and that is The Untold Lives of Women Killed by Jack the Ripper by Hallie Rubenhold. This is basically a look at the 5 women who were killed by Jack the Ripper. Polly, Annie, Elizabeth, Catherine and Mary Jane are the 5 women, and it looks at their lives. It's less of a true crimey book, but more of a inspection of their lives and the lead up to their murders and why they may have been chosen. It does not glorify the murders, which I think is great. Again, there are nice pictures in this. I say nice pictures, but like photos that came from archives at the time of newspapers, and just photos of the areas, of the buildings, of the people. This is great if you really want to give those women back their voice. The next is a book I actually have 2 copies of, and that is The Law Killers by Alexander McGregor. I have 2 copies of this because this is one of them is revised, so this is the updated edition. So this is the the first one, the first edition that I had. Oh no. Now I can't tell because this one says updated, new edition, and this one says updated edition. So I can't remember which one's more contemporary, but basically this looks at crimes specifically committed and murders specifically committed in Dundee. So you see there, that is actually the Dundee Sheriff Court, and that is a cityscape of Dundee that doesn't quite look like that anymore because, like, I think this has been demolished at least. And like these flats over here. Anyway, so maybe this one's the new one? I can't remember. But yeah, Alexander McGregor is a journalist who wanted to look into the killers around Dundee. So there's the Templeton Woods in Dundee, which are well known for quite a few murders and suicides and things like that. So he does talk about the Templeton Woods in this. I think there was a series of murders that happened in the Templeton Woods, and he looks at them. He looks at the possibility of Jack the Ripper coming to Dundee and committing murders in Dundee. It is speculation. He does say that. It is stated very well. I was actually put onto this by one of my lecturers who's a friend of Alexander McGregor, and the lecturer was a crime scene tech. He did the CSI stuff. He was like in charge of that. So if he is quite happy with Alexander's writing of this, I'm quite happy with it as well. There are so many cases in this. Like I say, there are, you know, new cases. It's just short stories, as it were, ranging from, you know, the early 1800s onwards. And I just think this is a fabulous read, especially if it's somewhere that you're interested in, because I went to university in Dundee, so it was so interesting to learn about the crimes that had taken place, especially for somebody who studied forensics in the area. For example, there was in one of the rooms we used to sit in for our lectures, if we looked out the windows to our left, so the door was on the left hand side, sorry, and there was just a wall of windows on the right, and if we looked out the windows, there's a road that goes up towards, it's like up to the, it's, I know which road it is, but I can't remember the name of it. But there's like a wall, and then there's like almost like a cliff face, and then like greenery. And my lecturer was like, see right there, along that, where that bit of wall is, just down under there. And I'm like, yeah. And he was like, yeah, so we dealt with a murder there. Sorry, I had to go put the light on because the sun is giving up the ghost. Yeah, so he was like, yeah, see over there. Yeah, we dealt with a murder down there. There was a body there. There was a poor woman that was killed by her ex-boyfriend and flung over the wall to try and conceal her body. He said that one was fun to try and get to. I think this might be, that might be in here as well. We were also, he was also friends with one of the handlers, the dog handlers, cadaver dog handlers, and this dog, I can't remember his name, but this dog found body pieces on the law, like on the Law Hill in Dundee, while he was on a walk with the owner's daughter, who was just taking him for a walk, and he was like, hey, look, there's body parts here, and she's like, Dad, come get your dog. He's finding body parts. So yeah, stuff like that is all in here. It's fascinating and interesting, and if you've got morbid curiosity about things like that, this is great. It isn't too graphic, but take that with a pinch of salt, because to me, graphic is relative. Next up is Traces by Patricia Wiltshire. Patricia is a leading forensic scientist and criminal investigator. She actually studies trace evidence, hence why it's called Traces. So you're talking about like minuscule, tiny little things, you're talking about fibres, you're talking about pollens, you're talking about microscopic things that we don't realise that in our day-to-day lives we are carrying around, picking up and dropping off in random places, which is why a lot of people don't seem to understand how they can be caught for murders, and this is why. It's these fabulous scientists that work on trace evidence, and this is a memoir of her cases, some of her cases specifically, and the work that she did. This was a fascinating read. This was a fantastic read. It's a very short book, and it's so fascinating. You cannot imagine how incredible it is. Just dirt. Like, if you take dirt from one area and put it in another area, this woman can tell you that it's different dirt. Like, I know that sounds daft, but like, to do with the pollen that's there, to do with the different levels of things like silica and other minerals in the ground. They can tell an area that this dirt has come from. So if you, for example, bury a body, dig it back up, bury it somewhere else, they can tell where it was initially buried and they trace you back that way. Pollen gets everywhere, but there's different concentrations of pollen places, because if you're next to the plant, there's going to be more pollen. Further away from the plant you are, less pollen. Fibres. One of my lecturers, the one I was talking about before, Dennis, he used to constantly say, actually a lot of them used to say that, but Dennis, it was a particular favourite of his, every contact leaves a trace. It's called Lockhart's principle, and that is basically, so if I was to like rub up against your jumper with my jumper, parts of my jumper would transfer onto you and parts of your jumper would transfer onto me, and depending on how much was transferred, you'd be able to say that these two things have been in contact. Trace evidence has always been so fascinating to me, and like, you've got to just Google pollen. Google like microscopic photos of pollen, because it's fascinating. Next up is another expert, and that is Unnatural Causes by Dr. Richard Shepherd. Dr. Shepherd is a forensic pathologist, so he deals with autopsy and postmortem on bodies, and this is again a kind of memoir of different bodies and different things that he has done. I do believe he was one of the forensic scientists who looked at, he was there for the, who was the guy that was going, Raoul Moat. He was one of the experts called in to deal with the aftermath of that when he went on a rampage shooting people, in, it was like in Yorkshire or something like that, years ago. And this is just fantastic and fantastically interesting. The way that these experts work together and the things that people like Dr. Shepherd can sort of pull from bodies, from people, like, they are the voices, pathologists are the voices for people who have died, and specifically people who have died in ways that we don't understand. And forensic pathologists, the point is to hope to get justice for the person, to figure out how they died, why they died. They can answer a lot of questions with forensic pathology, and I wanted to go into forensic pathology for so long, but it just wasn't to be, unfortunately. I would have had to go do a medical degree after my forensics degree, and unfortunately because of my illness, that just was not something that was on the cards. So I live vicariously through this and through Patricia Cornwell's Scarpetta novels, Scarpetta being a fictional forensic pathologist. But it's interesting to see this as well, because this is from a UK perspective. I think most of these are all UK, whereas obviously that Patricia Cornwell's American, so that's all from American. So it's just fascinating to see the differences in how we do things. And the pathologists, they don't just stand in their sterile labs, they go to scenes, they do the work. All these scientists and all these people do fantastic work, and you'd be amazed at the things they see. Like, the kind of steel gut they must have, and steel nerves. The next two go a bit more into the psychology of things. So the first one is The Devil You Know, Encounters in Forensic Psychiatry by Dr. Gwen Adshead and Eileen Horn. I still don't know if I'm pronouncing Gwen's surname properly, but Gwen is a forensic psychiatrist, and this basically again is like different, so it goes by names, but they're obviously fake names, and she talks about the patients that she has treated and the patients that she has had sort of time with and helped, and some of the things in forensic psychology are just like unbelievable. The things that can come about from the human mind are unreal. This I found was very, very accessible, very easy to read. Again, can be quite upsetting because these people are either have committed heinous crimes or have been victims of crimes, and Gwen treats all of them like they are human and like they deserve to be treated as such. And for that, I wholeheartedly love this book, because it's true. Like, you will not find, it's very, very rare to find somebody who commits these crimes who has not been hurt in some way. Like, there's somewhere somebody said, like, hurt people, and that's so true. That the people that Gwen talks to and the people that Gwen treats are people who have been misused and abused and neglected in their life, and it has led them to crimes which then have led them to harming people. She doesn't deal with like psychotic serial killers, like the cold-blooded, kill to get the rush sort of people. These are people who have committed violent crimes in sort of like, so like say somebody's robbing a house and all they want to do is steal the stuff and sell it to get money because they can't make money another conventional way. Someone happens to be in the house and they harm them and they end up in jail. And because they have something wrong, such as schizophrenia, is a great example in this, that she uses one of the people in this has schizophrenia, and it had gone untreated for so long that it caused them to become violent through reasons that were not his fault. And once he started treatment, he became a whole different person. And it just shows that we need to be able to pick up on things like this. We need to be able to help people, to get them into treatment, to, they need help. He was treated terribly. He was abused by his family, by his mum, his dad, his uncles. Like, he was terribly abused as a child, and no wonder he ended up how he did. It just shows that we really need to get to the root of the problem and get people treatment, and as soon as possible. And believe me, this book, other than anything else, tells me that everybody needs therapy. Like, everybody should have therapy at some point in their lives. I've had therapy, love it. I dreamt about my therapist the other night. Like, I dreamt that I was talking to her about something, which was really weird because I've not seen my therapist for months because I stopped therapy because I couldn't afford it. And the waiting list for the NHS is very long, and I can't be referred to psychiatry or therapists on the NHS because apparently I've had my allotted time with them. And anyway, but yeah, Gwen just does a fantastic job. She is so, like, I would love to meet her and speak to her and sit down with her. She seems like such an approachable person. She's so lovely. Like, she just is. Next is one, again, that kind of goes into the psychology side of things, and that is Murder, the biography by Kate Morgan. This one I wasn't as keen on. It is quite a bit more academic, and by that I mean very inaccessible. The language that she uses is quite dated and quite flowery and quite, like, you would hear it spoken between scientists and between experts, not as something published for the general public to read. There was a few times me, with a forensics degree and somebody who reads quite widely, had to look at words to find out what she was talking about because it was written in such a way that was like, I know what I'm talking about. That's fine, we don't. Other than that, beyond that, it was great. Fantastic book. Looks at murder from the sort of inception of murder as a crime and how it has developed through the centuries. Fantastic, absolutely fantastic book. I just wish it was a bit more accessible. I'm sure that Kate Morgan, I'm sure that it wasn't that she thought she was better than everybody else and that's how she's going to write it. I'm absolutely sure that's just how she thinks about things. She wrote it how she would think about it and how she would describe it, and that is perfectly, like, we were taught to talk like that and we were taught to write like that at university. Absolutely fine. I just feel like if you're going to give something to the public, you need to make it accessible for the public. Other than that, no complaints. Next up is actually someone who is also quite a famous crime writer, so you may recognise his name, and is also very good friends with Sue Black, who I have her books to come in just a second, and that is Val McDermott, and this is her book Forensics: What Bugs, Burns, Prints, DNA and More Tell Us About Crime. And basically what Val has done is she uses her crime know-how from her novels, and she uses her connections with people such as Sue Black to look at just forensics in general. She gives it a brief overview, I suppose, of the different areas of forensic science. She talks about anthropology, I'm going to say etymology, but it's not that, entomology, you know, the way that crime scene stuff has changed, the way that they look at things like toxicology, pathology, digital forensics, facial reconstruction, like all that different thing, blood spatter and DNA. Like, this is basically just like a really quick, I mean, it's a dense book, it's really, it's only like 300 pages, but it's like thick, it feels thick. and dense, and it is a very condensed version of forensic science. So if you want like an overview of forensic science and its uses and things like that, it is a fantastic book for this. Absolutely stunning. I mean, I loved it. I absolutely adored this, and this is the first thing I've read from Val McDermott, which is terrible because she is from a town that is like 15 miles that way. So I should really be reading her books, but I just don't get along with crime novels. But this is a work of art. This is a fantastic overview of forensics, and it does get into the sort of, it doesn't sort of make it all pretty and nice and package it up like that. It really gets into the real forensic science, but it doesn't go overboard. Like I was saying about the murder book, this is very accessible. If you want to just get to know some things about forensics, maybe something you're just sort of getting introduced to, this is what I would recommend. Fantastic book. And the next two books are by the one, the only Dame Sue Black. So this is the one this is the first one I got, All That Remains, and then there's Written in the Bone, which is her newest one. I love the sprayed edge on this. Yeah, basically these are both almost like memoirs that Sue has written. So they talk about Sue's life as a forensic anthropologist, becoming sort of the UK's top forensic anthropologist, and her life and how she became interested in that, the work that she does, some cases that she's done, her work at Dundee University and her work abroad. These are just absolutely fantastic. The research and the work that Sue Black has done is unreal, and to speak to her, she is so down to earth. She's just great. I love Sue. She's just fantastic, and she absolutely, like, the funny thing is she absolutely takes no nonsense from anybody. She is like, I think she's shorter than me. I can't even remember. It's been so long since I've seen her. But like, she is the kind of woman that will sit on the stand and has had men who are being accused of crimes, murders, heinous things, try and intimidate her, and she's just like, yeah, cool, whatever. Like, this woman is a badass. This woman is a badass, and this woman has seen and done incredible things in her field. She made her field what it is today, and you know, I cannot recommend her books enough. Because she is a lecturer, she also makes it. I mean, she's a professor. Our full title is Professor Dame Sue Black, and you know, therefore these are extremely accessible, and they also show that she's not a cold clinical person as well. It shows her personality. It shows her love for her subject, her care that she puts into each case that she is given, because behind that case there's a life, there's a person, and even down to the respect and care that she gives to her cadavers in the lab at Dundee University, and the respect that she expects her students to give the cadavers. I really considered going back to university just to do a degree under Sue, but then I wasn't able to, so yeah. But she's just a fantastic person, fantastic woman, and these books are some of my favourite forensic books, just because I can't even explain to you how fantastic these two are. So yeah, that is my fairly quick, I hope, recommendation for true crime novels. If you like true crime podcasts and things like that, you like watching true crime on TV, these are some books that I really think you will enjoy. Some of them are a bit more niche, like I said, like the murder one and the Dead Men Do Tell Tales, things like that. They are a bit more niche on the academic side, whereas like Val McDermott, Sue Black, Richard Shepherd, Patricia Wiltshire are a bit more on the accessible side, as it were. I've read all of these, and I definitely recommend all of these. Please let me know if you read any of these. Also, just to shout out a couple of true crime podcasts and blogs that I also enjoy. So there is Talk Murder With Me, which is hosted by one of my old friends, Natalie. she has a blog and a podcast, and I'll put the links below. They are available on like Spotify and things like that. And also Mile Higher, which is a podcast run by a husband and wife team, Kendall Rae and Josh, who discuss true crime, paranormal, weird things. Like, it's so interesting, and the care that they take with their shows, just, it shines through. They are there to advocate for the victims. They are there to help bring awareness to cases where victims they still do a lot of like victims who are still missing. You know, a lot of cases that are not closed because they don't want people's eyes to be taken off of them, because that's when we start forgetting about people and leaving them behind. And Kendall and Josh are such advocates for continuing to work for people who are missing. And they work a lot with NCMEC as well, which is the National Centre for Missing and Exploited Children. A lot of their proceeds and profits and things like that go to NCMEC, and they run fundraisers and things. So I love Kendall and Josh. Again, I'll link. Kendall does have a channel as well, and I think it's on Spotify as well. And I will tag all of it. I'll tag Mile Higher and Kendall and Natalie down below. These are all just fantastic podcasts that I love. I actually listened to Josh has another podcast called Lights Out, which is a more creepy, like, he talks about really graphic, horrible crimes, and also like hauntings and paranormal stuff, like stuff that literally makes me not be able to sleep. And I tend to fall asleep listening to his voice because he's got such a nice voice, to the point where he made a podcast for people to help them fall asleep. It's called Planet Sleep. But anyway, I digress. I will leave everybody linked down below. Please do pick up these books if you are interested in forensics. Do bear in mind though, given that it is forensics, they can be quite disturbing and graphic, so just be careful going into it. It is very different when we're talking about true crime. Like, you might be able to read graphic and gross things in novels, but please remember when you look into true crime and into these sort of books that these are real people. There's no glorifying or, you know, up there murders and things like that. It's not to do that at all. But a lot of these people will not back down from telling you what has been done to someone, because they want you to understand that this is not okay, and they want you to understand how it works. And when you study this sort of thing, you kind of have a wall almost go up that allows you to discuss graphic things in detail like that to a layperson would be quite disturbing. You need to do that, otherwise it will drive you nuts. Like, a few of these people have burned out at some point because the things they are exposed to are just a bit too much. So please bear that in mind when you are going into these books if you decide to read them. So thank you very much for watching this video. I have so much more that I want to do for these videos, so please, if there's anything particular, any particular genre, tropes, anything like that you want to see recommendations for, please let me know in the comments below. And links, everything like that will be in the description box. And yeah, just thanks very much for watching this video, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!